The Kraken. A monster of the deep, unseen until it strikes, powerful enough to shatter ships and drag men into the abyss. And the worst part, nothing could stop it. Russia has its own nightmare lurking in the shadows, but this one isn't a myth. The Kraken Regiment, a Ukrainian special forces unit under the main Directorate of Intelligence, was built for war. Relentless, precise, and feared for a reason by everyone, especially the man who woke the Kraken up with his actions, Vladimir Putin. Because once the Kraken is unleashed, there's no escape. This is the story of a ragtag group, forged from the unlikeliest of backgrounds, that became a force that struck terror into its enemies. Now, special forces and ragtag misfits don't usually belong in the same sentence. After all, when you think of an elite military unit, you probably imagine career soldiers, trained for years, moving with cold, calculated precision. But the Kraken Regiment, it was something else entirely, at least in the beginning. The unit's members weren't plucked from elite training programs. They hadn't spent years mastering military doctrine. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, the unit was born, right there and then, in Kharkiv. Not in some high-tech military base, but from the chaos of war itself. And the people who formed it? Gym rats, bouncers, die-hard football fans, ultras who lived for Kharkiv's metalist team and weren't afraid to throw a few punches for it. Construction workers who traded hammers for rifle, regular people who just days before were drinking at their favorite sports bar, the same one bombed in 2014 by Russian separatists. But they couldn't have done it alone. The unit was officially formed by hardened fighters, veterans of the infamous Azov Regiment, Ukraine's legendary last stand defenders. They were joined by battle-tested paramilitary fighters from Donbass and even trained officers from Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, or HUR for short. Speaking of HUR, the Kraken Regiment was formed under its umbrella. As such, it answers to Ukraine's defense ministry. However, Kraken isn't part of the country's regular armed forces. That distinction gives Kraken a unique role, not bound by the same structures, not confined by conventional rules. But make no mistake, this isn't some disorganized band of fighters with no discipline or direction. Quite the contrary. Under HUR's command, Kraken has developed a clear and structured military framework, allowing it to function as a highly effective force. At the heart of the unit is its headquarters, overseeing operations, strategy, and logistics. Beneath it, Kraken is divided into specialized companies, each with a distinct role. Its assault companies, 4 in total, form the backbone of Kraken's offensive power, carrying out frontline attacks. Supporting them is the Special Assault Company, an elite unit likely tasked with high-risk missions that require extra precision and firepower. But Kraken doesn't just rely on brute force. The regiment includes a drone company for intelligence gathering and precision strikes, a mortar company for indirect fire support, and an artillery group to deliver devastating long-range attacks. Add to that a tank company and an armored company, and it's clear that this unit isn't just fast and flexible, it's also got serious firepower. Behind the scenes, a medical service ensures wounded fighters make it back to the battlefield, while the J9 department handles civil-military cooperation, likely working with local populations in liberated areas. So Kraken may not be a traditional military unit, but its structure is anything but chaotic. Every fighter has a place, every company has a purpose, and they are all led by professional military leadership. At the top stands Konstantin Nemechev, one of Kraken's main founders and commanders. A former member of the Azov Battalion and a political figure in the National Corps, Nemechev's leadership is anything but conventional, just like the unit he commands. But as an HUR officer, Nemechev isn't always on the ground with Kraken. But the man who sat down for an exclusive interview with Kyiv Post on March 22nd certainly is. Known by the call sign Alpha, the Kraken commander provided rare insights into the unit's inner workings. He too emphasized that structure is everything. The management hierarchy is the key word that makes an army, a military unit, a military unit. There is a commander, a superior, and a subordinate, Alpha explains. And many of Kraken's commanders earned their stripes in the brutal fighting of Ukraine's anti-terrorist operation zones before 2022, giving them first-hand experience in countering Russian aggression. But Alpha and the rest of Kraken ultimately doesn't answer to Nemechev. Above them all is Kirill Budanov, Ukraine's head of military intelligence, a top spy, and a man Alpha describes as a true leader, and not the kind to sit behind a desk. According to Alpha, Budanov is known to arrive during the execution of a task at a command post, or go out to a position where it's not very safe. His goal? To motivate the personnel. So Kraken's fighters know exactly who they serve. They serve under HUR's banner, guided by a commander who doesn't just give orders but stands with them, in the trenches, in the fire, leading from the front. That's why Alpha singles out Budanov as one of the motivational factors for serving in Kraken. However, this wasn't what initially drew people to Kraken. In the weeks leading up to Russia's full-scale invasion, tensions in Kharkiv were already escalating. HUR officers were preparing, creating hidden stockpiles of weapons, rifles, grenades, machine guns, and anti-tank launchers. When the first Russian missiles struck on February 24, 2022, these weapons fell into the hands of those who would soon form the Kraken unit. "We knew the war was coming and we were making preparations," recalled another Kraken commander known as Vito. On the morning of February 24th, there were 450 people ready to defend their city. By noon, that number almost doubled. However, for Alpha, the war became personal in Bucha and Irpin. These once beautiful suburbs of Kyiv turned into sites of horror. "For me, this was key, something that changed my approach to war and my motivation," Alpha explains. Once you hear about the brutality these two cities faced, Alpha's motivation will instantly become clear. In the Bucha district alone, over 1,400 civilians were slaughtered, with more than 9,000 Russian war crimes recorded. A mass grave near the Church of Andrew the Apostle held 116 bodies, many tortured beyond recognition. Some plaques on the city's Wall of Remembrance remain blank, waiting for the unidentified among the 509 civilians memorialized there. Irpin fared no better. The Russian military killed nearly 300 civilians, dozens of them women, and around 50 servicemen. They were shot in the streets, executed in basements, and starved to death in their homes. These horrors left no room for hesitation. The war instantly became about survival, about vengeance, about ensuring such atrocities never repeated. And so by June of 2022, the Kraken Regiment had already grown to 1,800 fighters. It took some time for all of them to adjust and integrate, but throughout it all, motivation was very high, as Alpha notes. Now the unit operates as a well-oiled machine and is always on the hunt for new warriors to stand beside it. A look at the Kraken's call for volunteers should give us a clear picture of who wears the unit's chevron and who should. Kraken isn't for the faint of heart. The unit is looking for fighters who won't flinch, men who face challenges head-on and don't back down from danger. Physically tough? Absolutely. Mentally unshakable? Even better. If you break under pressure, Kraken isn't your home. Alpha gives more context. If people want to be part of the history of independent Ukraine, they must make that decision now. In other words, this isn't just another military unit, it's a legacy in the making. And teamwork? Non-negotiable. Kraken fighters don't do it alone. They're brothers in arms, problem solvers, and quick thinkers who can adapt under fire. If you're the kind of guy who can lead and inspire, they want you in their ranks. A few rules: no foreigners. This fight belongs to Ukrainian citizens. Age limit? 18 to 45. And the volunteers will be committing for the long haul, either via a 3-year contract or mobilization. The Ukrainians who match this description undergo testing, which includes some questionnaires, a polygraph test, and of course, physical fitness tests. The selection process lasts for 1 or 2 weeks, after which roughly 30 to 35% of candidates are accepted into Kraken. So if you're in, it's because you've earned it. Once selected, it's not just about following orders, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. Fighters undergo general military training, providing a solid base for specialization in everything from tactics and strategy to advanced weaponry. When it comes to discipline, Alpha is clear. Discipline is key for us because we cannot successfully complete any tasks without military discipline. In other words, the Kraken Regiment isn't a place for sloppy soldiers or loose cannons. Every soldier must be sharp and ready to tackle anything. And this doesn't solely apply to physical fitness. Kraken has a high bar for intellectual capabilities too. Many of its members are highly educated, reflecting a broader shift towards professionalism in Ukraine's military. Of course, none of that matters if you don't have the right tools for the job. When Kraken first began its mission, the unit's resources were a bit on the creative side. As the war started, the unit had to make do with what it had: civilian SUVs, pickup trucks, and ATVs. As for the weapons, they had some heavy hitters like a Czech anti-tank weapon, but most of the unit didn't know how to use them. Today, Kraken's arsenal is a far cry from those humble beginnings. Now, the unit is equipped with state-of-the-art weaponry and tech, showcasing the evolution of its capabilities. Here's a glimpse of what Kraken's got at its disposal, according to militaryland.net, a database dedicated to Ukrainian military units. T-80BV Mod 2018, T-72EA, T-72B3M, and T-72B3, heavy-duty main battle tanks Kraken uses to dominate the battlefield. BMP-1TS and BMP-2 IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles that deliver mobility and firepower. BTR-82A APCs, armored personnel carriers designed for protection and troop transport. M113 APCs, reliable and versatile vehicles for tough terrains. And D-30 and M777 howitzers, beasts for long-range fire support, raining destruction on enemy positions. The unit has also been pictured with a variety of Western weapons, including Austrian Glock pistols, Belgian Scar rifles, American M4A1 assault rifles, Swiss B&T submachine guns, and Croatian RBG-6 multiple grenade launchers. This level of firepower and technology means Kraken no longer relies on makeshift tactics. The unit now has the heavy-duty tools to match its brainpower and tactical prowess. What once began as a ragtag group armed with creativity is now a fully equipped, highly professional force, ready to take on any challenge. And let us tell you, the Kraken Regiment has taken on some serious challenges so far and emerged victorious. Let's dive into some of the unit's most notable battlefield successes, where raw courage and relentless strategy turned the tide in its favor. It all started with the defense of Kharkiv in 2022. On February 24th, the first volunteers took their positions around the city, forming a defensive semicircle. Just days later, on February 27th, they were already fighting enemy saboteurs in the streets, teaching Russian special forces a lesson near School No. 134. The battle was a major turning point, sending a clear message to the invaders: Kharkiv was no easy target. On March 7th, Kraken repelled an assault of the infamous Kadyrovites, elite troops of the Akhmat Special Forces, and so the unit's defenses quickly became legendary. But Kraken didn't stop at holding the line, it took the fight to the enemy too. On March 27, 2022, Kraken liberated Vilkivka, cutting off critical supply routes. By April, the unit freed Rusk-Golozova, a ghost town with only 200 residents left. Kraken kept pushing, securing Potomnik on May 10th and crushing Russian artillery threats to Kharkiv. But the unit's actions weren't just tactical, they were symbolic too. In April, Kraken dismantled a monument to Marshal Georgy Zhukov, a prominent Soviet military leader, making a statement against the Russian occupation. However, the Kharkiv counteroffensive in September of 2022 was when Kraken truly solidified its place in military history. The counteroffensive itself was nothing short of historic. As Alpha put it, everyone knows about the Kharkiv counteroffensive, Ukraine's glorious defense. According to him, Kraken played a key role in this operation, liberating approximately 2,500 square kilometers and more than 15 settlements. That's roughly 965 square miles of territory. So by the end of September, Kraken's reputation was firmly cemented. The unit reportedly captured more than 15 Russian officers, further proving that it wasn't just part of Ukraine's counteroffensive, it was spoiling Russia's plans every step of the way. Its relentless spirit and unmatched precision made it a force that Russia couldn't ignore, and trust us, it didn't. A full-on propaganda campaign against the unit was already well underway. Russia desperately tried to discredit Kraken, labeling its members as neo-Nazis and accusing them of far-right extremism. The Kremlin claimed Kraken fighters had executed 100 of their own soldiers in August 2022, while boasting about killing 350 of them with high-precision missiles in July. However, while the Kremlin did what it does best, lie, Kraken kept its focus sharp on the battlefield. Every false report, every smear only added fuel to the fire. The more Russia tried to tear it down, the more Kraken proved it couldn't be stopped. From Soledar to Bakhmut, Kraken's mighty tentacles reached everywhere. In December 2022, the unit entered Soledar, where it actively targeted enemy command posts and threw off Russian plans. By January 2023, even Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky took notice, personally thanking Kraken for its crucial role in fighting near Soledar in a speech. Fast forward to October, and Zelensky dedicated an entire X-post to the unit alone, highlighting its outstanding results near Kharkiv, Soledar, Bakhmut, Kupiansk, and in the north. And this praise is well earned. When the situation in Bakhmut looked bleak, for example, military commanders turned to Kraken, knowing its reputation for getting the job done, and the unit didn't disappoint. Bakhmut remained under Ukrainian control 6 weeks later, despite the overwhelming pressure. 2024 didn't change a thing for Kraken, the unit only got better. From April to May 2024, Kraken was on the front lines in the defense of Chaziv Yar, a key point in Donetsk Oblast. Kraken stood firm in the eastern district of Novyi, blocking Russian advances and ensuring the enemy couldn't claim even an inch of ground. A video from May 7th captured the devastation, a town that used to have 12,000 residents now reduced to rubble. Yet Kraken proudly declared that not a single occupier was left in the city. President Zelensky, ever the supporter of the unit's heroic efforts, made sure to thank Kraken once again for its extraordinary contributions. As the days wore on, the unit moved on to more critical operations. By May 10th, it was deep in the forests near Lipsy, preventing Russian forces from pushing further into Kharkiv. Alpha described the mission as Kharkiv 2, a pivotal moment where Kraken decisively cut off Russian logistical routes and wiped out nearly an entire regiment, all while clearing nearly 1,000 acres of forest. By October, Kraken's actions had significantly weakened Russian positions near Lipsy, setting the stage for another Ukrainian victory. Russia's fear of Kraken continued to grow as its reputation for dismantling the country's defenses spread, and the Russians were right to be afraid, as none of them, not even senior commanders, were safe from Ukraine's not-so-mythical beast. In late December, Kraken proved this in Zaporizhia. Armed with intelligence and razor-sharp strategy, the unit set its sights on Sergei Melnikov, the chief of staff of Russia's notorious Storm Ossetia Battalion. Using drones, their low-cost, high-impact tools, Kraken ambushed Melnikov in a vehicle, eliminating him on the spot. But here's the thing, these extraordinary battlefield successes wouldn't have been possible without the unique spirit that defines Kraken. And this part scares Putin the most. Any unit can have advanced weapons and training, but this isn't what makes Kraken unstoppable. No, it's how the unit treats each and every soldier, not like mere cannon fodder as those on the other side often do, but as brothers and sisters in arms, united by a deep, unbreakable bond. As Alpha explains, there is a personal connection to each member of the unit, one that goes beyond the typical commander-soldier relationship. For example, he takes time to visit those who are about to go on missions, to speak with them, to motivate them, much like Budanov. He even admits to making personal vows, promising to do things of significance if they return safely. This deep investment in his comrades is more than just leadership. It's a form of brotherhood that turns every mission into a shared responsibility. But it's not just about morale, it's about trust and mutual respect too. Kraken's decision-making process is a stark contrast to the rigid, hierarchical approach that defines Russia's military. In Kraken, every fighter has a voice, and their input is valued. Alpha describes how, when planning a mission, the soldiers who will carry it out are trusted to offer their insights. If they believe a change in tactic could lead to a better outcome, their opinion is not just heard, it's acted upon. Sure, the final decision rests with the commander, but it's made with the collective wisdom of the team. In Russia, things couldn't be more different. Since the beginning of the invasion, the country has lost at least 9 generals, with reports going up to 21, since Russia's top brass simply doesn't trust its troops to carry out a mission without direct oversight. In contrast, Kraken thrives because of the unwavering trust its fighters place in each other, from the highest-ranking officer to the newest recruit, and it's this level of trust and unity that makes Kraken truly unstoppable. Kraken fighters are a family bound together not only by duty, but by their shared experiences, sacrifices, and losses that define their journey. As Alpha reflects, the hardest part of being a commander isn't giving the orders, it's knowing that those under your command may not return. The most difficult moment, he says, is when you assign them a task, fully realizing that it may be their last. Yet despite this weight, Kraken soldiers keep fighting, because they know they're not just fighting for their country, they're fighting for their brothers and sisters standing beside them. They're fighting for over 46,000 Ukrainians who have already paid the ultimate price in the war, each of them a reminder of what's at stake. But the losses Kraken has suffered, their heroes who have fallen, aren't forgotten. They are remembered, celebrated, and used as motivation for those still fighting. As Alpha states, the fallen are examples for all the fighters of the unit. Their courage and sacrifice continue to inspire and drive the next generation of Kraken fighters. And these fighters are nothing like the Russian soldiers standing on the other side, no matter how hard the Kremlin tries to paint them as villains. While the Russian military's tactics are often marked by cruelty and disregard for their soldiers' lives, Kraken's warriors show humanity, even to Russian prisoners of war. Alpha speaks candidly about how this unit handles those who fall into its hands during the war. For us, they are first and foremost an exchange fund, he says. Still, each of them is treated with respect and compassion. Not a single prisoner has died with us, Alpha asserts, emphasizing the unit's commitment to humanity. This stands in direct contrast to the horrors faced by those captured by Russian forces and even Putin's own soldiers. In one particularly haunting example, Alpha recalls a group of 6 Russian soldiers who, starving and parched after days without food or water, chose to surrender rather than face execution at the hands of their own commanders. We intercepted their communications, where their commanders ordered, "If you return, you will be executed," Alpha explains. Kraken soldiers, on the other hand, see those who come to them as human beings, not just soldiers. In fact, Kraken's humanity extends beyond the battlefield. The compassion of its members is evident in their support for the local population too. The unit regularly works with humanitarian organizations to deliver much-needed supplies to hospitals and those in need in Ukraine. But don't mistake this compassion for weakness. While Kraken soldiers may put humanity first, when it comes to war, they accept nothing less than a victory. Alpha sums it up best. Victory is when active combat operations cease, when innocent civilians stop dying, when our troops stop falling. So Kraken may fight with honor, but the unit fights to win. Anything less is unacceptable. But will this fierce unit live to see the victory it's fought so hard for? What do you think? Also, what do you make of the Kraken Regiment as a whole? Have you come across any military units like it before? Sound off in the comments below.